Okay folks, some developments on the 3-link coupling. I've decided to make myself a jig to help me with the gluing of the coupling and all that sort of thing. So what I've done is, I'll put some pictures up as well, but I've just got a couple of brackets and mounted them onto a piece of timber. Got myself a spring, and I've just bent a piece of wire here to come through the other side. And while I've got it sort of set up there, I can, when I want to heat up the links, I just hang them on there and put the flame to them and cook them up. And when they've cooled down and ready to go, they're then fitted onto the spring and the hook here, and I can also rotate this. So I can set it up into position and check that the links are straight and everything, and I can get it into, say, this position here, and add my super glue to the middle link. But before I do all that now, I've also decided to make that special link that I put on the long wheelbase wagon, and I do that with, I've just got some wire I've stripped here, and I've got some fine strands of that, and I take that to the end link here, and I just wrap it around about 3 times hard up against this hook, and twist it on and sort of keep it in place, and then add some super glue to it and trim off the excess at the end. So this jig is quite handy because it takes the fiddly side out of it, you know, trying to handle these small things while you're gluing, and you know, where do you put them, and while they're drying and all that sort of thing. So so that's enabled me to go over to the special link system. So I've converted all my stock now over to the split pin system, and we'll have a look at some of that. Okay, here's a classic example of this little open wagon, and you can see the split pin is on there holding the coupling now much closer to the buffer beam than it was with the previous system, and I don't get any locking or anything with the chain through this link, so it works very well. And on the other end, I've decided to use a panel pin, which is a very small nail, and bent it to shape, and it's purely for the look of it. It doesn't work any better than the staple, so it's all about looks there, folks, that's all. And I've got a whole box full of them. Now, a major concession I've had to make is on this long wheelbase wagon. It was working most of the time through pretty much everything, but I'd get the occasional derailment, and it's all caused by the movement of the body of the wagon in relation to the bogie. And you know, it's pretty obvious, I suppose, to most of you, but the further the bogie is moved away from the end of the wagon, in other words the pivot point, the further it is away from the end, the more movement you get in the end of the wagon when it's going through curves. And as I say, this worked most of the time with the fixed couplings on the body of the wagon, and in the end most of the time just isn't good enough. So I've gone with Gary's suggestion about fitting something to the bogies instead, and I've come up with this system here, and I've got some still photos that are popping up now and then to show you what it looks like. But this now works 100%. So the small open wagons, or the short wagons, it's not a problem with the coupling fixed onto the buffer beam. Works fine. And even on other long wheelbase wagons like this flat car here, this bogie bolster, I mean, if you look at that, the pivot point is much closer to the end of the wagon. So this wagon does get some movement in it, but it's nowhere near as pronounced as the other one. So it's horses for courses, folks. I can get away with it on this wagon. I can have the couplings fitted to the buffer beam, and it still works. But just that extra few extra few millimeters pivot point away from the end changes the ball game completely. So it's something to keep in mind So this system again is about compromise, especially for this big sucker here. But I still think it looks alright, you know, and certainly looks good when it's running along. This railway has stock running in both directions, so it's all come off a mainline station. Now with this system I'm employing for the wagons, no matter what direction the wagons are running, I can have them set up with all the chains at one end and hooks at the other, regardless of the direction they're going, and it doesn't really matter how they operate. But it does matter when it comes to how the locomotives couple up to them and the brake vans. And so this is the first brake van that I've done, and again I'll put up some pictures to show these couplings properly, because this video doesn't like zooming in here. We'll just give it a chance to sort itself out. Right, it's better if I rest it on something, folks, so the focus doesn't have to do with my shaky hands. Now what I've done on this wagon, exactly the same at both ends. There's no magnets in this wagon. I've used one of these panel pins and I've bent it up as a hook, and I've actually filed it flat on both sides so that I can get a chain over the top of it. And I've left a little sort of lip on the top here at the front, and there's one at the back. And what happens is when this chain can possibly move up the hook to the top there, because of the wire that's super glued across it there now, it can't get past that point. So that's all about keeping this chain in place. And just behind this chain I've cut a little donut of wire insulation and pushed it onto the panel pin, just to keep the chain towards the front of the hook to stop it sliding right back, otherwise it won't lift up properly. So at this point here it can still lift up properly around the bend on the hook. So as I say, I've done this at both ends of the wagon, and what it means is these wagons can couple up from this end or from the other end, or they can be coupled to. There's no problem, they work anyway, any orientation on the railway. As I say, they don't have a magnet in them, so if this wagon was being approached by another wagon that had its hook coming towards this chain, the chain would be drawn up to that hook automatically. However, if the other wagon coming towards this wagon now had the chain leading, the chain would have to be lifted over the top of that hook to couple it up. So that's the compromise that's had to be made with brake vans, and to some extent that'll have to be done on locomotives as well.